They laid him in a tomb. 4 days later, Jesus whispered his name, Lazarus, come forth. In that moment, the boundary between life and death flickered. But what if I told you there is a hidden story of Lazarus? A story the gospel hints at but leaves in shadow an echo between life and death that scholars and preachers often overlook. Why does John chapter 11 matter so deeply, not just as a mind-blowing miracle, but as a mirror for our own spiritual condition? Today, we're going on a journey into that hidden story. We'll walk with Mary, Martha, Lazarus, and Jesus, moving beyond the surface details. Together, we will examine how the resurrection of Lazarus reveals a profound echo of death, promise, and ultimately, transformation. So, let's set the scene. We're in Bethany, a small, humble village just outside the bustle of Jerusalem. This is the home of two sisters, Mary and Martha, and their brother Lazarus. They're not just followers of Jesus, they're his friends. It's a place of warmth and hospitality. But then, tragedy strikes. Lazarus falls gravely ill. News reaches Jesus, who is some distance away. And his response is, honestly, a bit cryptic. He tells his disciples, this illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified. Let's just pause and let that sink in for a moment. At first glance, it sounds like a detached, philosophical claim. But embedded in that statement is an invitation. An invitation to see that Lazarus' very decline, his movement toward death, is somehow woven into a divine plan. The hidden story of Lazarus begins right here, before the tomb, before the raising. It begins in faith, expectation, and a concept we often struggle with, divine timing. Now, let's journey with me into those dark, agonizing hours. Imagine Martha, her face stained with tears, her heart shattered. She hears Jesus is finally approaching the village, and she runs out to meet him. Her first words are filled with anguish. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Her words just hang in the air, echoing with a pain we all know so well. The pain of what if. What could have been versus what has become. And in her raw grief, we see the spiritual tensions that we all carry: loss, doubt, and yet, a fragile glimmer of hope. She's standing at the intersection of her reality and her faith. When Jesus finally arrives at the tomb, the scene is heavy with sorrow. Mary is weeping, surrounded by a crowd of mourners. Their collective grief is a thick, tangible presence. And then Jesus, in the middle of it all, asks a simple, heavy question: where have you laid him? They reply, Lord, come and see. And in that pregnant moment, something extraordinary happens. The shortest verse in the entire Bible, Jesus wept. Even knowing the power he holds, even knowing what he is about to do, he is deeply moved. This isn't for show, it's Christ's genuine participation in our human sorrow. As a storyteller, I have to pause here. Why did John include Jesus' tears? Because they answer a critical question for us: does resurrection ignore grief? The answer is a resounding no. The echo between life and death passes directly through sorrow. The hidden story of Lazarus is not a shallow, triumphant march over pain. It fully acknowledges the crushing weight of mortality before revealing the unstoppable force of new life. Then, Jesus gives a command that shocks everyone: take away the stone. Martha, ever the practical one, protests. Her words are raw and almost graphic. Lord, by now there is a stench, for he has been dead for days. The tension is visceral. You can almost feel it. Death, decay, finality, all of it stands like a giant rock, blocking the way. But this is where the beautiful reversal begins. Jesus looks at her and gently reminds her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? In this darkest of boundaries, for days in the tomb, when all hope is gone, the stage is finally set for a divine interruption. Then, in a voice that shatters the silence, a voice filled with authority and love, Jesus calls out, Lazarus, come forth. And in that single moment, the hidden story reverberates through eternity. Lazarus, wrapped in grave clothes, steps out of the darkness. He's still carrying the smell of death, yet he is alive. Resurrection is not erasure, it's a re-encounter, a transformation, a restoration. But let's look closer, because this is key. He emerges *bound*. The hidden story of Lazarus absolutely includes his bindings. Those grave clothes are speaking to us. They tell us that new life did not obliterate the experience of death. Death is still present in the very fibers wrapped around him. The echo between life and death remains. And what are Jesus' next words? He looks at the stunned crowd and says, "Unbind him, and let him go." Freedom, even after resurrection, requires a community to help disentangle us from the remnants of death. The miracle is twofold. First, Lazarus is restored to life. And second, he is unbound from death's suffocating grip. For us as believers, that echo resonates so deeply. Our spiritual life isn't about pretending death, failure, or pain never happened. It's about living in the reality of resurrection while still acknowledging the shadows that linger. So, after all of this, why does John chapter 11 matter so much? Because it teaches us some profound truths. First, resurrection does not bypass grief. In this story, Jesus walks right into the mess, the tears, the loss, the disappointment, the rupture of death, and then he calls forth life out of it. He doesn't go around our pain, he goes through it with us. Second, faith is often awakened in our boundary moments. Martha's incredible confession, "I believe that you are the Christ," doesn't happen when things are easy. It blooms in the valley of her deepest loss. Our belief often grows strongest not in perfect sunlight, but in the middle of darkness. Third, the echo between life and death is part of our story. We don't live in denial of mortality or our past struggles. In Christ, we live transformed, but the scars of our mortality are acknowledged. They become part of our testimony. And finally, our bindings must be undone. It's not enough to be called back to life. We must be unbound from the things that hold us back: shame, fear, sin, old habits. Those are the grave clothes that can still cling to us. When we really meditate on this hidden story of Lazarus, we see that resurrection isn't some far-off fantasy divorced from our pain. It is a profound, personal remaking. Jesus meets Mary and Martha in their sorrow, he confronts the horror of death head-on, and he calls forth life. And in doing so, the resurrection of Lazarus becomes a symbolic lens for every believer's journey from death to life. Perhaps, right now, like Mary and Martha, you are carrying a heavy weight of loss, regret, or emptiness. You might feel the chill of death, not necessarily physical death, but a spiritual one. It could be fear, broken relationships, or the silence of unanswered prayers. The hidden story of Lazarus whispers to you today. There is a voice, even in the darkness, that is calling your name, saying, "Come forth." Maybe you feel bound by grave clothes, whether it's shame, guilt, a destructive habit, or overwhelming grief. But the same voice that called Lazarus from the tomb is reaching toward you. He invites you to surrender your bindings, to step out trembling, perhaps into resurrection life. And remember this, just because resurrection life begins, it doesn't mean the echo between life and death vanishes overnight. You may still feel the sting of what was lost, the memory of decay, the ache of your own mortality. But in Christ, those echoes become a testimony. They declare that yes, death was present, but life gets the final word. So here it is, the hidden story of Lazarus. It's not merely a miracle meant to us, but a mirror reflecting our own journey, a journey of grave and glory, of decay and new life. The echo between life and death is woven into the very fabric of John 11, and that chapter matters because it bridges heaven and earth, sorrow and victory, our human frailty and God's divine power. As we close, I want to invite you to linger with a few questions. What binds you today? What are the grave clothes that you need Jesus and your community to help you untie? What losses have you carried, waiting to hear resurrection's voice? And will you believe that even in your darkest hour, the same voice that called Lazarus is calling you by name? If this story resonates with your heart, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Resurrection is not just a doctrine, it is the hidden story waiting to break forth in your life. Thank you so much for watching. If this content was meaningful to you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more reflections like this one. We'll see you in the next video.